Given that I have been spending so much time watching movies, especially revolving around superhero stuff, it begged the question of, if this character existed in real life, who do I think I would be good friends with? And I tried to imagine, if I had to pick one of them to be my actual best friend, who would I choose? As a child, I always felt like I knew who my favorite people were in the fictional world. And I feel like I was not thinking about them critically, because as a child, that's not necessarily something you just do. And when I think about it, some of my choices would have been pretty questionable. But now, with the mind of an adult, I must confess that this question beat my own ass. My own personal question beat me. I sat in silence, staring at my wall for a solid 5 minutes, thinking about it. And then I said to myself, the best way I can pick my superhero is to define which universe I'm most familiar with. Because immediately I thought about Captain America and Superman. But then I was gravitating more towards Superman. But then I realized that I really don't know Superman as much as I think. And given that I have more exposure to Marvel, I felt like my superhero is going to have to come from Marvel. And I'm going to base my opinion off the MCU only because I cannot say that I have ever read a comic. So, to narrow down my options, I was thinking people like Peter Parker, Captain America, Black Panther. That was about it, really. I kept it that simple. But then I said, realistically, I'm gonna have to go with more than one choice. I limited to two. And if you observe my attire, you pretty much got the answer already. I believe I would choose Black Panther, and I believe I would choose Captain America. In real life, I gotta say I am polyamorous when it comes to best friends. I have more than one best friend. For the longest time, I had one best friend. Then this best friend simply became absent in my life. Then I found the replacement best friend. And after my replacement best friend, who continues to exist to this day, I have a supplemental best friend. And when I think about these two superheroes, I can tell you that one of my best friends happens to like Captain America anyway. So I might imagine this best friend as Cap, and then my second best friend does not resemble Black Panther at all, but the traits they possess do remind me a lot of Black Panther. So I'm going to start off with Captain America. I looked up a summary of what are the character traits for these two. For Captain America, it said that he is strong, kind, noble, and exemplifies the best of humanity. When I think about those traits, I feel like I can identify with some of Cap from the MCU, because especially in his movies, the movies that actually fixate on him, he started off as someone who is physically weak, unimpressive, but he had a very creative, solution oriented, kind, gentle mind and nature. And I think that makes him charming, especially as someone to have in your team. He was given this serum, and what I can admire about him is that I feel like the way he's written is, despite him taking this serum, which could have possibly acted like alcohol in someone's system, how alcohol does not alter your behavior, it just amplifies what's already there. Well, I looked at this serum as it could have amplified what he already had, and I feel like it made him bigger, stronger, but it didn't change his nature. He was still kind. He's still someone who doesn't like bullies. He's still someone who prefers that you don't cuss around them. Just an all around, well mannered, well educated guy. And I like having folks like that in my life, because sometimes, although I grew up with a lot of those values and I still hold on to a lot of those values, given how much that they demands from me, especially demonstrating patience, kindness, and understanding to people who absolutely do not deserve it. I feel like I could use a friend like Captain America, like Steve, to remind me that, hey, it's gonna be okay. Don't give up on this person by, say, becoming mad and showing a nasty side of you just because they're challenging you. Trust your instincts, don't lose your composure, and no matter what, just show up, do your best, and as long as you're doing it for the greater good, say you're not out there trying to hurt somebody or something like that, I think Captain would approve. And I think the best of humanity is when we collectively make decisions that benefit all of us as opposed to selfish decisions. Like, say, in the modern days, we live with a lot of individualistic goals. I feel like Captain America never had individualistic goals. I feel like his goals were more about making society better as a whole. He is a servant more than he is a taker. He is more a giver more than he is someone who continuously just receives things. And I feel like Tony Stark was more of a taker than a giver, but he wanted to give people his ideas and his values, as opposed to, hey, I'm inventing this stuff. You can either take it or you can leave it. And I feel like that's why I couldn't pick Tony as my best friend. I think he could make a good friend, especially analytically speaking, but when it comes to me trusting him in general as a mentor figure, I don't think I could. And then with Black Panther, the result I got is his righteousness, kindness, and his belief in the good of people. When it comes to Black Panther, I feel like his leadership is one that is trustworthy. You can count on him, and I'm talking about T'Challa here, being someone who is approachable. He may be royalty, but he's not the kind of royalty who's inaccessible. I feel like he remains humble in his own way. And I also think that he has good intentions when it comes to that argument they had about how his cousin wanted for Wakandan technology to pretty much be out there, but he wanted it to kind of take a revenge on the world to make up for the suffering that, say, people of color have had everywhere else. But T'Challa, I guess he does agree with wanting to help humankind like that, but I think his way is how his ancestors were keeping that within the country, within Wakanda, but he's also at a conflict because he does believe in wanting to help. And I think that he, for the longest time, wasn't very aware of the methods that his ancestors were using to fulfill such a mission, keeping Wakanda protected and keeping them not involved and superficially looking like they're a third world country, but deep down they live in secrecy. I think T'Challa has an especially demanding leadership because it's about how the modern times people are more aware of what they have and what they can do, but they choose to be isolated. And in a sense, I can understand why you would want to remain isolated because it seems like anytime outside of fiction in real life, we seem to have trouble commingling to where one group of people does not try to overpower another, claim supremacy over another, and threaten the existence of the other. I think that T'Challa finds the way to protect the identity of his people whilst also sharing what they have, but in a way that's not superimposing. Like, I don't feel like his leadership style is one of, well, y'all are begging us for our natural resources and our research and development and our advances. But because we're so much better than you, clearly we're beyond all of you in inventions and all those things. He doesn't behave with a superiority complex. And I think that is where his kindness shows. I feel like he will show up for everybody and anybody, even if technically he shouldn't, I guess. But because he believes in the good of people in general, I think that makes him the kind of leader that people are not ever going to be against. Even in the first movie, how he had that one clan turn on him or whatever, I still believe that even those who were demonstrating to be loyal to the new king being his cousin, it was refreshing to see that people are still willing to follow his leadership, even if the throne was temporarily taken from him. He had loyal people, and for you to have people who are known to be loyal to the throne, no matter who sits in it, like I think it was Okoye who said that. The fact that you still have people willing to break from protocol to follow you instead, I think that is the biggest challenge any human can have, which is a lot of us want people to follow us, but how do you get people to be willing to be your follower as opposed to continuously just challenging you and maybe downright refusing to join you in your cause or your way of seeing things? And I feel like people in Wakanda generally seemed happy with being under his reign, under his leadership. And I feel like he was able to achieve that by displaying those traits: the kindness, believing in the good of people, and the righteousness. I find it difficult to talk about fictional characters sincerely. Is not really my strongest suit because it's hard to do that when this is not a real person with real impact, real power. It's not like the problems in the MCU are actually existing in real life. In fiction, we have depictions of real life. To me, the X-Men, the way I see them, is they represent civil rights movements, like, say, advocating for people who you identify as disabled, people who you may identify as excelling in certain things, but that intimidates others and it is a threat for others. How do you help these people get by in society with that level of adversity that they have to face simply because they're different, simply because they have special gifts, and people will be intolerant of that because they have powers that others don't understand and others want, maybe even want to exploit, but obviously they don't want to submit themselves to such a thing because they're equal to everybody else. They should have the same rights as everybody else. And say, I think that Batman, for instance, we all know that he is a vigilante. It's a person with power and he's part of the upper echelons of society, but he's still out there risking his life fighting crime inspired by the loss of his parents. And in real life, we can say that some people, when they experience some kind of loss, that defines who they're going to be for the rest of their lives. And so I think that's what makes it hard for me to pick a superhero, because I think that they all could make good friends, but it all depends on your character and what your quest is. Me personally, as a chill person, but also a person who needs protection because I feel pretty vulnerable, but at the same time, I feel like I'm developed enough. I guess these two would push me in real life to take more leadership roles, which I feel like power has continuously been offered to me in real life, but I keep refusing it. I feel like Cap represents that better. I feel like he too has decided to turn down power at some point. I could find comfort from him. But if I wanted to embrace a position of power, leading people, I think T'Challa would cover me there because he has the experience with actually completely leading people. And he is the authority, as opposed to Captain America, who is essentially or was a tool for the government, but he turned that down at some point. So, yeah, you guys, those are my choices. I feel like I may revisit this video, this topic, if I think about it better and I discover that I left something out of my description. Like I said, this is hard for me. I prefer to talk about people I actually know and observe because I know them and I can apply elements of, my real life, which is how I react and interact with them and stuff like that. But this one, I can't do that. So it's harder for me to be like, okay, I could hang out with this person. Who's to say that if I were to have myself incorporated into the MCU, that I would change my mind about this? Because, say, T'Challa being royalty, I don't know what Wakandan royalty is outside of what we see in the movies, what kind of strictness they have. I know that they don't bow to each other, they don't curtsy and stuff like that, like T'Challa was saying that one time. What is their culture exactly like? Maybe I would find that daunting, the royal rules and strictness that they may have. As a society, they all seem pretty free and happy, but I'm sure that they have their beliefs and religion. What does that look like, and how would I fit into that? Maybe I don't. And with Captain America, he is American, so like, okay, I can relate to that, but he represents like the values of the Americans from the olden days. And I cannot say that in the modern day a lot of that exists. I think that we are fighting to keep that alive or revive some of it, but I feel like those values are definitely dying and in desperate need of resuscitation. So, yeah, you guys, let me know your thoughts. Share with me your answer. I'm pretty sure that literally any of you who comments with your own superhero choice is going to have a better answer than me. I'm going to try something, and if I'm successful, I'll be sure to share it with you. That would make it a good one. Okay, that's it. Bye.